Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, Episode 18.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thanks for tuning in to the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Today's guest is Mia Anstine. Mia blogs over at Mac Outdoors. She's a board member of a Safari Club International chapter, member of the Professional Outdoor Media Association, co-host of the Back Outdoors podcast, an NRA certified instructor, and a hunter ed instructor. Please head over to the show notes page, outoforderjameskalita.com/Mia, where you'll find links to all of Mia's content, as well as links to our sponsors and a way for you to sign up to the Out of Order podcast email list. And now, here's Mia.
Mia Anstine, welcome to the show.
Hi there, how are you today?
Good, thanks. So, Mia, you have an organization called Mac Outdoors. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Mac Outdoors is an umbrella that encompasses basically everything that I do, and I started it due to my freelance writing. I write for several publications and submit to several as a freelancer, but I also am a hunting guide. I have a podcast with my daughter, and that's the Mac Outdoors podcast. You can find that on several outlets wherever you listen to podcasts. And then I also am a hunting guide. I guide for my husband's business, which is Wolf Creek Outfitters, and then I freelance for other people when they need a licensed guide.
Wow. So how did you get started in all of this?
I got started in writing actually when I met my husband, and he owned the outfitting business. And I hunted before I knew him, but he was short a guide one season and he needed help, so he asked if I could come pitch in and guide a couple of the guys, so I did. And every evening after the hunt, when we were at the cabin, I was emailing my grandpa because he was wondering what I was up to, and I was telling him stories about the day's hunt and what went on. And a few of the hunters in camp, they were like, "What are you doing over there tapping on your keyboard?" And I explained to them what I was doing. And so a few of them wanted me to send the stories to them. And I started emailing these stories to the hunting clients, and it gradually grew where it was too many emails to keep track of. So I started my website, which is miaanstine.com. And I told them, just go to my website. I'll put the stories up there, and you can follow them there because, if I'd missed somebody, what happened at the end of the hunt, they want to know the stories. I was like, just go up there, and I started sharing hunting stories there, and shared a story about an elk hunt in the Alpine Gazette, and then from there, I gradually got picked up by different people who wanted to share the stories as well, and my writing career grew from there, and that's kind of where the guiding started as well, because I wasn't a guide, but I was just a hunter and pitched in to help. Went and got my first aid and CPR and started taking hunters out into the woods.
Wow. And so, where I grew up and where I hunt, I have yet to hunt in a spot where I can't use road noise as sound cover. So what's it like where you are? Is it, if you're taking a CPR and things, it must be different.
Well, I was a licensed outfitter in New Mexico as well, and when you're a guide or when you're an outfitter, your guides have to be certified. So you have to, in New Mexico, they have to be certified as guides, but in Colorado, the laws indicate the guides have to at least have first aid, and if you're going to take first aid, why not take CPR, right? So I got certified in both, and actually my daughter at the time, she was very young. She might have been 6 years old, but she was tagging along a lot too, so she got certified at, maybe 8 years old. She got her first aid certification, and it's just something really important when you're in the outdoors. And she and I have the Mac Outdoors podcast, and a lot of what we do is we try to encourage people to get outside. We want them to be in the outdoors, not necessarily hunting. I mean, if they want to hunt, that's a bonus, but so many people miss out on the outdoors, and if you're going to be out there, you do need some first aid and safety experience. I also am a hunter ed instructor. I didn't mention that, but when you take hunter ed, a lot of that is learning to be safe in the outdoors, and it's something that we all have to do. So that's where the first aid and the CPR come in. And yes, where we are hunting is very remote. A lot of locations you don't have cell service. We do tell clients when they're coming, if we're in an area that you're not going to be able to get in touch with your family for a day or two, let your families know so they're not worried and that kind of stuff. So it's a little more remote. I don't know, where are you located?
I travel between New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So Pennsylvania, actually, getting kids into hunting and shooting and outdoors, I got my daughter involved in the NRA's Youth Hunter Education Challenge, and that was right around the same time that she got her hunter ed when she was 6 or 7 years old, and then CPR after that. But that Youth Hunter Education Challenge, the acronym is YHEC, they have an annual competition. One is in Raton, New Mexico, and then they alternate the next year will be in Pennsylvania. And I believe it's Mansfield in northeast Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so we've been to your neck of the woods, and we kind of know you have a lot of cover there and not a lot of wide open spaces, it looked like, at least in that part of the state.
Yeah, it is. It is not a lot of open space.
Yeah. So I can understand. I travel a lot through my writing, and really we try to explore the world to understand how people hunt and why they hunt different ways. And what we learned there was, as thick as that foliage is, you're not going to be able to sneak up on a deer very easily. And so I understand that's why a lot of people use stands and blinds, where here we do a lot of spot and stock hunting.
Okay. Yeah, that's something, out here that when I brought it up, when I was learning how to hunt, people just kind of looked at me like that's not something that really gets done. But then as I talk to people further west, that's really how you guys hunt.
Yeah, it really is. If you sit and wait, you might, seasons are anywhere from 5 days to 9 days during the gun seasons. And if you sit and wait for 5 days, you just might not ever see what you're looking for. So you really have to go after them. There are game trails, but you can sit a game trail all day and maybe they're not going to come to that trail. There's so many wide open spaces that they may be going a different route that way. And you can sometimes pattern an animal to water holes and stuff like that. But a lot of times you've just got to move to get things done, even turkey hunting. I mean, we can spot and stock turkeys here too. So it's a lot different than some of those areas where you don't have the open spaces.
Right. Yeah, we're here. It's actually illegal to stalk turkeys.
Yep.
Right. So if you're a board member too of Safari Club International, would you tell us about that?
Yeah. So Safari Club International, they have a lot of local chapters, and I became a board member when a few of the older members left this one here locally, and they needed some new board members, fresh blood on the board, I suppose. But I had been a member of SCI for quite a while, and I didn't understand that there's the national umbrella and then there's the chapters. And with the Safari Club, the chapters actually, they have their fundraisers and local events to raise money, but 70% of all the funds that we raise stays local. And I learned all of this when I joined the board, because they were like, well, you need to become a member. And I was like, well, I've been an SCI member for years. I didn't understand what they were talking about. And so that is when I learned that, I've been a member nationally, but chapter-wise, it gets people more involved on a local level. And we do a lot of fundraising events. We give money to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which is our Department of Naturalization division over here. We give money to their bear studies. We've given money to some of the bird studies and stuff like that. We're currently working to learn more about chronic wasting disease in our area. So it's coming. I live in southwest Colorado near Durango, and CWD is kind of moving down this side of the state. So we're working with biologists to learn more about that. And we also give to, I mentioned the YHEC shooting program. We've given to that program in the past to pay for their travels over to Pennsylvania and stuff like that, pay for ammunition. this year we've donated, and last year, to New Mexico's 4-H shooting sports so they can go to the national competition. And there's some just outstanding kids that are going on a level that a lot of people aren't aware, that these kids are so focused, and they are very disciplined and learn to shoot and compete. And they also build camaraderie and then relationships with other kids from throughout the country. So that's really a cool thing that we love to give to. We also give scholarships to students, and the scholarship that we implemented, it's in memory of one of our former board members that was killed in a vehicle accident. But he was a contractor. He built homes, and so we wanted to give to students who not only want to go to colleges or universities, but we give to them so they can go learn a trade. And some of them just needed a little money to get to welding school or plumbing school or become an electrician, and we're helping support that now too. So being on a local safari club has been a really cool thing.
Wow, it sounds like it, yeah. And I didn't realize either that there were two separate, things that he would join.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of people don't, because a lot of chapters are embracing technology and learning how to get messages out. But I think in the past, on a local level, it was kind of word of mouth. And you just, I knew you, and then we'd go to a banquet for, that was like camaraderie and, a good dinner and auction. But a lot of people are learning now the actual aspect of what these chapters are doing. And SCI as a whole, I actually attended a month ago. We had a chapter leadership forum, and that was near Jackson, Wyoming. And they actually take us there, and they taught us kind of ways to get the message out, and how some chapters don't even have websites, and how to make a website, how to do social media, which is an ever-evolving monster, but a lot of people didn't know how to do that. So it's neat that they're kind of trying to help their chapters reach more people, and hopefully a lot of people will learn that message and join different conservation groups. I'm also a member of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, National Wild Turkey Federation, and a lot of other organizations. So there's not just one, but there are ways you can volunteer and give back. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've had a lot of success sort of growing the hunting community. The 3 states I spend the most time in, they're seeing that shrink. Do you have any advice for getting youth more interested?
That is a topic right now, and I don't think it's just 3 states. I think it's nationwide. They're seeing a drop, even though, a big thing, since I'm a lady that hunts, and I used to write for Women's Outdoor News, so I've been, a key in the industry and getting awareness out there. But you see the demographic of women growing, but what they had been pushing that, and celebrating women. But the thing that we don't see, and as a hunter ed instructor, I really try to implement on new hunters, you have to share the hunt, whether it's taking somebody along and maybe they don't want to hunt, maybe they want to take photographs. You can take somebody with you and they can enjoy the outdoors without shooting an animal. Some people are perfectly fine with hunting, but they don't want to do it themselves. Well, they can still get out there and they can still share the positive message of the hunt. What has happened is, while we're focusing on women, the men, a lot of the key population of hunters has been older men, and they're what they call aging out. They're getting too old to hunt, or they're passing away. We're actually seeing that in the writing industry. A lot of the senior writers they're passing away. And so we've got to share that by embracing new writers, new hunters, and taking them out there and sharing it with them. Something that we do on a local level is we do archery shoots, and we do a 3D shoot, so we can have senior archers there mentoring the younger archers. The Colorado Bowhunters Association, I'm a member of that. They actually sent me down to Texas to an event called She Never Quit, and that's at the Marcus Luttrell's, Melanie, his wife, it's at their family's ranch. And we had women there, and I taught them archery and then also explained to them hunting, just to give them a brief taste. Maybe they don't want to hunt, but at least they'll have an awareness and a positive awareness. So I think that's really key, that all of us need to share the message and do it in a positive way, whether it's one-on-one, like the teaching that I do, or on social media. We just have to keep a positive attitude, and also we have to support one another because, as I said, that's an archery organization, but I've seen, muzzleloaders combating archers and vice versa, and we can't do that. We have to support one another in order to recruit others into hunting.
That's true, and it does seem that, whenever there is a change in like legal technology, there's a lot of pushback. I remember growing up, people thinking that compound bows were, just cheating, and now that same message seems to be out there about crossbows, and in Pennsylvania, they don't like inline muzzle loaders. There's guys that resist those, so yeah, it's good advice.
Yeah. I also understand it kind of their aspect. There has to be a purity, and there's just so many shades of gray. I mean, you want the pure hunter. As far as an archer, an instinctive archer may not be so fond of the new Garmin bow sight that actually does all the range and distance for the hunter and actually calculates elevation. I can understand that, wanting to keep it pure, but at the same time, as a hunting guide, I can't tell you during rifle season how many elk I have gutted out that have broadheads in there because they were wounded during archery season. And that's a story we don't write about because it's not a happy one. And so I can see where you would want a better bow sight. And then, I could talk about this topic forever, but conversely, there are a lot of new archery hunters that aren't taking the time to practice, and they're not honing their skills for the hunts, and coming from lower elevations, learning to be in shape up here for the higher elevations and calculate the distance of the shots. Down there where you live in Pennsylvania, you have a lot of shadows and tunnels. The range looks different there than it does in the wide open, jagged, rugged mountains where we are. So it's something people need to take time in their shots. They need to learn when not to take a shot instead of trying so hard to get an animal down for an image for Facebook, something like that. So I understand a lot of archers, young and old, they really want a positive image and they want the skill of archery to be true. And same goes for muzzleloaders, So I don't know, in Colorado and New Mexico, 10-point crossbows, they are in your state. In New Mexico, I have a 10-point crossbow, but I use my crossbow during rifle season. So you can't use it legally during archery season, but I can during rifle season. So go ahead, do that rather than trying to impose on a season where in Colorado 3 years ago, we had a muzzleload hunter that shot an archer because the seasons overlap, and he broke a lot of rules, and it was an incident that shouldn't have happened. But there's talk of separating those seasons now. So the muzzleloader obviously is more powerful than the bow, and when you're archery hunting, you don't have blaze orange. So that debate can go on, but I do think there is a need to keep some of these traditions pure, and if you want to use an inline and a scope, then do it during a regular rifle season. That's my personal thought on that.
Sure. So we were talking about how the writers were aging out. Do you have any tips for writing good stories? I tell you, if there's so much going on in my mind when I take an animal, somebody will ask me later what happened, and the only thing I can think of is I shot the deer. I have all these images in my mind and all this going on, but I can never seem to get it onto paper.
Yeah. Writing is a skill that takes practice. And as I told you earlier, I'm a member of the Professional Outdoor Media Association. I'm currently the treasurer for the organization, and I've been a member for probably a decade. And I joined that because when I started out writing and people were starting to pay me for articles, I didn't understand I didn't go to school for journalism, so I needed to kind of figure out what I was doing and learn. But what I've really learned, if you're sharing your story on a blog, how I started, is the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And as a blogger, if you're going to blog, you need to just practice. Something a friend of mine, Nancy Jo Adams, way long ago, we used to read each other's articles, and on our personal blogs, there would be an error. And, she said, well, errors are okay because it's my blog, and I just wanted to get the story out there. And so there is something to be said about that, is just, when the inspiration comes, get it out there. Something that I do is I'll type it up and then I'll go back later and read it. And that's the same with the articles I write. I have a mule deer series I'm doing for Big Game Hunter magazine right now, and it may take me 2 weeks to a month to hone an article because I'll, typos and stuff like that. So that's an easy way to get that out and share your story with others.
Thank you. So I think in Colorado, you guys had the 15-round magazine restriction go into effect. Has that impacted hunting and your writing in any way?
For hunting, there are limits to the rounds you can have depending on what species you're hunting and such. It really hasn't impacted me directly. I think what it has impacted is our rights to firearms. The magazine restriction hasn't reduced any crime. It hasn't limited people from being crazy and wanting to harm other people. So I think more that really didn't affect us in a hunting aspect. As far as other states where they've restricted, I have friends, it's affected their competitive shooting. So they're having to go and register with a government and able to shoot competitively. So in that aspect, it has changed a few things. As far as hunting, I really would say no. Coyote hunting, you can use a larger magazine, whereas elk hunting you cannot. So in prairie dogs, you may want a larger magazine. There's a grandfather law, so the magazines that we had already, we didn't have to turn in. And so, as I said, it really hasn't affected us personally.
Okay, well, that's good. But you didn't have to turn them in, and that. Yeah.
Right.
So, what advice would you have for someone? I guess there's two things that I see a lot: adults that never hunted as children and want to do it now, and then parents who never learned how to hunt and have children that are interested. Do you have?
That actually is a wonderful subject, and I talk about it a lot. I actually was speaking at a convention in Ohio one time, and I was on a ladies panel, and it was a Q&A panel for people, and most of the crowd was men, and of course a lot of questions, and I get the question all the time is, how do I get my wife involved in hunting and stuff like that? Well, after the panel, there was a young lady, and I think at the time she was 19 years old, and she came over and she just wanted to thank us for our seminar, and she wanted to tell us her story. And at 19 years old, her father had passed away. She was one of 5 children. She was the oldest child, but she wanted to hunt. And so other people can do this too. She wanted to hunt. She wanted to learn about it. So she went and she took her hunter education class. She got her hunter safety. She asked the game wardens there, the officers, what she could do, how she could get started. And this is a great thing, is ask questions, ask for help. And they gave her some tips and pointers. She decided that she wanted to start with waterfowl. So she went and got a shotgun. She bought a shotgun, and she practiced at the trap range. She practiced shooting and learned how to safely use her gun. And so then she saw a property where she saw these birds all the time. And she would drive by it on her way to work. She stopped by, knocked on the door, and explained to them who she was and that she was learning to hunt, and asked for permission to hunt on their property. And that's how she started hunting. She actually went out there and hunted by herself. And I grew up in a hunting family, but for years I hunted by myself. And hunting by yourself is a lot of fun. I mean, it's fun to have the camaraderie of others in the field. But that was how she got started. She had curiosity, she went and asked, and she learned. And other people can do that too. A lot of the articles that I write, if you look, just Google my name, a lot of them are how to get started. And a lot of people message me on my social media outlets asking for help, asking for tips for gear, and so forth. So if anybody has questions for me, I gladly take them. On the Colorado Sportsman's Roundtable, I attend public meetings around the state, And something that I really noticed was, as I said before, we pay attention to women and children, but there was a man, he was probably late 30s age, and he was at this roundtable meeting, and he just wanted to learn about wildlife and hunting, and he was afraid to ask and was embarrassed to ask about hunting. So that's something that we don't address is, like you're saying, the older aged men that maybe, they didn't have hunting families and they're wanting to learn now. And sometimes the men are embarrassed to ask because it's kind of assumed, well, you should already know. And that's also a place where you can look to a hunting guide, and hopefully that guide can teach you. When you're looking to book a guided hunt, always ask questions. Call them, don't email them, call them. And ask them questions so that you can learn what their hunts are like. And if you're new to hunting, ask them if they'll teach you. I mean, that's something that we do when we take hunters out is I'll teach them, especially out west, if you're from back east or somewhere, teach you what signs you're looking for, where they're going to be and why, and about, the wind currents and thermals and how that's going to affect the day's hunt. So those are all ways that people can get started in hunting.
Thank you. I've been asking all my guests if there is any books that you recommend that hunters or gun owners read. Either.
Oh gosh, I can't think of any right straight off the top of my head. One that I can think of that whether you're a hunter or not, if you're wanting to be out in the woods, it's a bushcraft series, and I can't think of the author right at the second. But it's a whole series about being in the wilderness and learning how to survive. There's a lot of survival in there, what you can eat in the wild, wild food and such, stuff like that. And that's really a good book for anybody who wants to be in the outdoors. And I'm trying to think of others. I read constantly, so I can't think of one particularly at this very moment that stands out as far as hunting tips.
Okay. Well, I thank you for that recommendation, and I thank you very much for being on the show. Where can people find you?
Well, I wanted to thank you very much for having me. It's an honor that you would be interested in my thoughts or outlook. And anybody who wants to learn more or follow me, they can look up my name on the internet. As I said, it's Mia Anstine, MIAANSTINE. On social media, that's my name, and I'm not good at handles or aliases, so Mia Anstine. And my website is also miaanstine.com.
Okay, great. Thank you. I thank you again for being on the show, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Out of Order Gun Rights podcast. Please head over to the show notes page, Out of Order James Kalita /Mia, and we'll see you next time.